Hello everyone, welcome to AWS reInvent. I'm excited for today's session, Building the Ultimate Cloud Native SOC with Palo Alto Networks. My name is Keith Mokris and I lead product marketing for Prisma Cloud here at Palo Alto Networks, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my co-presenter, Prasen Shalar, Senior Product Manager at Cortex XOR. And today we've got plenty of excitement to cover, so let's dive right in. First and foremost, we want to cover the fact that cloud-native architectures driven by DevOps workflows present tremendous cloud-native SOC challenges. First and foremost, there are new architectures that organizations need to adapt to. So certainly cloud growth is driving application modernization, and these new architectures can impact how you need to think about cloud-native security and response. Secondly, DevOps is obviously on the rise everywhere, and all of these motions put organizations in a constant state of change. Cloud services are dynamic, often quickly ramped up and down by business owners, and this brings with it a lot of reaction from security teams in order to address these DevOps challenges. And ultimately, we want to ensure that security isn't left behind. And so in order to integrate security across the application lifecycle, we want to talk about this and how security can rise to meet all of this rapid cloud innovation. And as we look across the landscape, we want to recognize the fact that cloud-native applications span a continuum of architectures. And ultimately, in order to address all of these architectures, you really require purpose-built security that can adapt to all of these technologies. And certainly, AWS has a wide range of compute offerings that enterprises and organizations are gravitating to really power their modern application architectures. So whether you're using EC2 to power a modern application built on containers, or you're just using EC2 to, more of a lift and shift type of mechanism to get to the cloud, it certainly is a huge pillar of organizations' cloud-native application portfolios. And then you have lots of different compute architectures like Amazon ECS, Amazon EKS, AWS Fargate, and AWS Lambda that really run the gamut from containers to managed Kubernetes, on-demand containers, or serverless architectures, all that require a continual, consistent approach to security. And as we move forward, we really want to emphasize the different things that you need in order to address these challenges. And we've broken down three core requirements here. First and foremost, especially at runtime, you need defense in depth. So you really need a strategy that protects the entirety of the application as soon as it's running. Not only the application itself, but also the perimeter of the application architecture specifically mapped to the cloud. Secondly, as your applications are built and deployed with automation, you need automated issue identification and remediation. So just like attackers use automated attack tools to really increase, their velocity of attacks, in order to improve your overall security posture, you need to leverage automation given the tremendous scale that cloud-native applications and architectures encompass. And then finally, in order to have complete security in the cloud, you really need to integrate security across the application lifecycle. So ensuring that you have coverage across CI/CD workflows, and you can continually prioritize risk at runtime in order to improve the overall security posture of an application. Let's dive in and how Palo Alto Networks' portfolio of solutions can help you build the ultimate cloud-native SOC. So first and foremost, I want to bring you to the Prisma Cloud Cloud-Native Security Platform, which secures applications across the entire application lifecycle, integrated with all of the different compute offerings you may be using on AWS. And we have complete coverage across build, deploy, and run to really deliver best-in-class security across all of these different build phases. So we integrate with tools like AWS Code Build to scan not only infrastructure as code templates, but also we can scan container images and functions as you build really strong pipelines across the application lifecycle. We'll also integrate with your container registries like Amazon Container Registry to continuously monitor images for vulnerabilities and lock down your deployments, only deploying what you've approved and have control over. And then finally at runtime, we're going to combine, and you'll see this in our demo later, visibility across your environments as well as protection for your applications, whether they're running on ECS, EKS, or even serverless stacks. At the same time, we also bring in powerful capabilities from VM-series virtual next-generation firewalls. And these firewalls deliver consistent, automated threat prevention and inline network security for any of your cloud deployments. And we're really proud to be able to deliver best-in-class security for AWS with deep integrations of AWS technologies. For example, on the Palo Alto Networks blog, we recently covered how we integrate with AWS's Gateway Load Balancer for even more better performance and simplistic, consistent security. Here we highlight some of the key ways that AWS network security works with VM-series. So we're able to deliver perimeter protection so you can prevent inbound threats and control outbound traffic to safeguard development environments and prevent data exfiltration. We also deliver capabilities around network segmentation so you can inspect traffic between and within VPCs for threats, reduce your attack surface, and ensure compliance. And then ultimately, all of these capabilities are truly baked for the cloud. So regardless of where you run your applications, or regardless of what compute stack you're using, VM-series and Prisma Cloud can deliver powerful security. Next, I'll kick it over to Prasein to talk about how Cortex XOR, also that integrates with Prisma Cloud, delivers key capabilities for security orchestration and response.
Thanks, Keith. Now that we've seen cloud-native challenges and heard from Keith how Palo Alto plays in this whole space, let's take a look at how Cortex XOR helps in general, and what are some of the major pillars that are offered by the product in terms of automation and orchestration. So let's take a step back and try to understand why even orchestration or automation is really even needed, right? So when you're working in SOC or when you're working in cloud-native environment, what you ideally have problems with is alert fatigue. And you're using 10 different tools, moving away from one product to another is really difficult, and that's the major challenge. So Cortex XOR helps you make sure that you can convert your manual workflows into automated tasks with 4 major pillars. That's orchestration automation, real-time collab, case management, and the new pillar that we added is threat intel. So what you ideally end up doing is making sure that you're creating a workflow that's orchestrated with the help of all the tools that you're using in your environment, making sure that you create your workflows really well and also collaborate with different teams and add them to the same investigation, and also leverage the power of case management where you keep track of your environment and make sure that you are monitoring the health of your environment and your SOC. As part of this, threat intel piece was also added in XOR recently, where you can ingest threat intel feeds and make sure that it becomes a comprehensive investigation and not just alert-based. Cortex XOR integrates with more than 500 tools. That's where the alerts come from, and all the other actions that are needed, which are API-based. So instead of doing and going manually to EC2 or S3 in your environments, you can use XOR to just replicate those same actions with the power of APIs. Also, there's a playbook-driven automation marketplace that was recently added in the product, where you can explore new use cases from different customers, contributors, and partners, etc.
Thanks, Prasein. And next, we're going to walk you through an example scenario of how Prisma Cloud and VM-series can deliver powerful capabilities for securing an incident in the cloud. So in this example, we're going to use what would happen if someone were trying to use public cloud resources in a cryptojacking scenario. So essentially running unwanted, insecure software on top of your compute stack in order to essentially use your servers to mine some sort of cryptocurrency outside of your control. And in this Palo Alto Networks scenario, we're going to show how Prisma Cloud can deliver vulnerability scanning, and then how this integrates with VM-series next-generation firewall and various subscriptions that are part of that VM-series service, and then ultimately how Prisma Cloud Cloud Workload Protection would address some of these scenarios. So first and foremost, With any of your workloads or applications in the cloud, you want to ensure that you have coverage over vulnerabilities. So being able to scan both your VMs and any of your containers or functions gives you coverage to understand exactly where risk is and ultimately prioritize issues that you want to fix. And in this scenario, what were to happen if someone were to gain access to your vulnerable server? Here, VM security and the security services would stop app-specific threats and prevent known or unknown malware from being installed. The URL filtering service can detect and prevent communications to malicious C2 domains, and then Wildfire Malware Analysis Service can prevent the download of malware. And even more important, if you're running the Prisma Cloud Defender, which is our unified agent framework on this stack, you're able to automatically whitelist known good behavior and prevent any malicious behavior from running on top of your compute stack. And so here, if there was some sort of file system writes or a process aimed to be written to your application that was not part of this known good behavior, it would be alerted on or prevented. And this is just one of the simple scenarios that you have at your disposal to understand how Prisma Cloud and VM Series would work together to secure your stacks on AWS. And then at the same time, I'm going to hand it over to Prasein to go deeper around how Cortex XOR can provide powerful capabilities focused on incident response.
Now that we saw from Keith how cryptojacking alert is resolved using Prisma Cloud, it's time to take a look at how Cortex XOR helps with incident response. As I mentioned earlier, the power of XOR comes with the number of integrations it has and also the help it provides in streamlining your investigation. So in the case of cryptojacking, the basic response would be to quarantine the instance, creating a ticket, going to EC2, making sure that you're getting all the traffic from network connections, and at the same time closing the investigation after you've quarantined and done all those actions. If you do it manually, it ideally takes 40 to 50 minutes, and all these are repetitive actions as you need to work with different products. You're moving away from one screen to another, and that is a challenge. But XOR does this with the power of its automation, orchestration, leverages all the steps in a streamlined workflow, and make sure that you can create tickets as soon as alert is ingested from any product, as say, it could be coming from Prisma Cloud or AWS Security Hub or GuardDuty, or even the alert that you congregate from CloudWatch logs or any other logs. Once that is inside, you can actually classify and map the incident and run a playbook on top, which will create a ticket, which will get all the network connections, which will get all the network traffic for you, helps you enrich the data more, and then take a decision whether it has to be remediated using any set of actions, which need to be automated, or it could be manual as well as you add an analyst. In this case, we can see that there's an automated workflow where the instance is quarantined. And also with that, you close the investigation after an analyst is taking a look at it. Now with that, let's elaborate more on the problem. This slide makes me dizzy a little bit because there's so many tools, so many challenges, so many products that are being used, and a lot of different actions need to be taken over here. So as we can see, the workflow is disparate. There's no defined cloud security response process. It's repetitive, it's the same actions and different teams. And to collaborate with different teams and make sure that you're taking the same actions is really difficult. With this, what we come in with is a streamlined workflow that is offered by Cortex XOR. The alert ingestion becomes pretty simple because we have all these integrations. It could be Prisma Cloud, Security Hub, GuardDuty, as I mentioned. We can enrich these alerts and also respond using the native integrations we have with products like Security Hub, EC2, S3, CloudWatch, SQS, DynamoDB, etc. What this workflow does, it eventually helps you make sure that you're streamlining your process with the products that you need, that you ideally use in even your manual investigations, or you can use some on-prem tools like ticketing or firewalls, etc. And that's where Cortex XOR is good at. Let's also take a look at one of the example use cases where Cortex XOR leverages all its pillars that we discussed earlier. On the left-hand side, if you see, the alert could be ingested from a product like Security Hub, Prisma Cloud, Guard Duty, or it could be an unstructured streaming engine where the logs are collected and an alert is formed using that. What you need after that is an enrichment playbook to gather more information. As I mentioned earlier, that let's say in case of EC2 instances being open to the world, right, you need to make sure that it is for a reason. And you can find that out from network connections and the traffic that's flowing. With that enrichment, you can take decisions on top, whether to quarantine or take any different action. When it comes down to Cortex XOR with that enrichment, of course, that is offered by an enrichment playbook in XOR, you can use all the major pillars again, such as custom classification, where the alert is put into the right bucket. You have different dashboards. You can create customized widgets where you can see the right details. With that, you can track incident SLAs. It's not only about receiving and automating. We help you with a comprehensive workflow where you can track your incident SLAs, make sure that different teams are combined and they can collaborate really well, and also the incident lifecycle that goes through with all these alerts coming in at the same time. After this, all of this information that you can see as an analyst, you can run a remediation workflow on top of that, which could be configured to run automatically, or you can run that by looking at the alert. And the workflow could ideally be to segregate the alert to different teams as different teams are involved, such as Security Operations Center, or maybe to a Cloud Ops team or DevOps, DevSecOps, right? So in the case of simple misconfig, you would ideally redirect the alert to Cloud Ops instead of the routing an anomaly to a SOC. And that is where the power of tool comes from. It helps you to take automated actions, also help you to collaborate well, and make sure that you are tracking your workflow end to end. With this, I'll hand it over to Keith to give you a quick demo of how Prisma Cloud as a product solves the native challenges.
Hi, AWS reInvent. In this 5-minute overview, I'm going to highlight all of the different telemetry that Prisma Cloud can deliver as part of our cloud-native security platform, specifically designed and optimized to secure AWS environments, looking at both cloud infrastructure as well as the various workloads you're running on top of various AWS compute instances. First and foremost in Prisma Cloud, we're going to identify all of the various cloud resources that I have running on top of AWS. For example, I can come over to the Inventory tab, and if I select AWS as my cloud type, I can see all of the thousands of resources that I have running across my AWS environments. For example, I can look at all of my VPCs, my functions and EC2 instances. I can look at API gateways, as well as dozens of other services that I've deployed across AWS. Then, Prisma Cloud will automatically monitor these services to understand their current configuration, compliance, and security status. I can quickly see all of the different assets that are part of my accounts over time, and Prisma Cloud will automatically monitor them and see how they map to my specific security posture at my organization. For example, we can see that various resources may be passing or failing my security posture, and they may be mapped to various vulnerabilities that we can learn more about here. Additionally, if I wanted to investigate various resources, I can come over here and use resource query language to pull in various forms of data from the Prisma Cloud API via the data we're able to leverage on AWS. There are lots of different queries that we can offer, but one of the things I'll look at is looking at EC2 instances with a specific vulnerability. And if I look at this first one, I'm able to see a specific EC2 instance, and I'm able to gather a lot of information from it, such as when it was created and updated, when it was started and stopped, and by whom at my organization. And then I can also come in and understand security findings if they're available. Prisma Cloud integrates with lots of different primary data sources, and one of them that we can see here is a specific AWS resource itself. So if I come over here and scroll to the right, I'll be able to see data specifically coming from AWS Inspector. And we can understand that there's a medium vulnerability or high vulnerability impacting this EC2 instance. And I'd be able to gather lots of other information from the audit trail. Prisma Cloud allows you to map various policies across your AWS environments. Additionally, we're able to map all of these various policies or custom policies that you may want to create to pre-built or external compliance frameworks. So for example, with just a couple of clicks, I can see how all of my assets and resources are mapped to the NIST cybersecurity framework. If I wanted to also look at others like SOC 2, I can come over here and map all of these different findings and see the results to any of these compliance frameworks. Prisma Cloud also provides detailed alerting mapped to all of my resources that are across my AWS environment. For example, I can see here various alerts based on how I've configured AWS CloudTrail logs. And if I click in here for additional guidance, I'd be able to understand this policy, how to remediate this alert, and ultimately set up a rule to prevent this from occurring in the future. Additionally, you'll notice here that we have what we call the Prisma Cloud Compute tab. And this houses all of the various cloud workload protection capabilities that are integrated as part of Prisma Cloud. For example, I can see all of the hosts, containers, or serverless function where I have a Prisma Cloud Defender deployed. With that Defender deployed, I'll be able to continuously monitor and set rules governing vulnerabilities, compliance, and then runtime security audits and alerts. I can quickly come in and understand the vulnerability posture of any of my container images, specific package mapped to a vulnerability severity, as well as whether there's a vendor fix available or not. I can even go layer by layer through the Docker file that was used to build this container image in order to understand exactly where the risk is. For example, Prisma Cloud protects EC2 instances, ECS, EKS, as well as AWS Fargate and Lambda functions. All of that telemetry can be integrated here within a single dashboard as part of Prisma Cloud, giving you that single pane of glass for understanding and protecting your cloud native environments. Now here I've shown you some details when it comes to vulnerability and compliance status. But what if I wanted to protect a running application, and what telemetry would Prisma Cloud be able to provide you? If I come over here to the manage section, I'll be able to specifically see all of the various security incidents and audits that Prisma Cloud has identified. For example, we look at all of the process, network, and file system activity aligned to host and containers. And if anything nefarious or anomalous occurs, we automatically surface that information here for easy analysis. We also secure that information to ensure that you'll always be able to investigate it further. If I come over to the Container Models tab, I can see the details of any of the various microservices or hosts that I have running in my environment, as well as a detail of the forensic information that was used to create and then ultimately look at the behavioral monitoring of this instance. So here, if I click on the Forensic tab, I can go through the specific model and understand any deviation based on this detailed timeline view. I can also export or offload this information for detailed analysis. And this is a great point to say this is exactly where Cortex XOR comes in. What if I wanted to pipe out this data and ultimately aggregate it as part of my centralized security orchestration and response effort? And this is where I can come down to look at my integrations and set up Prisma Cloud to send this alert data directly to XOR. So if I come here and select XOR from the drop-down menu, I can set up various alert triggers in order to send data over to XOR for analysis. I can look at container image and compliance or vulnerabilities, and then I can also pull in host or container runtime security audits, as well as dozens of other sources of information. If I wanted to set up these alerts as part of Prisma Cloud, as part of our cloud security posture management functionality, I could also configure that alert over here via this integrations window. So if I come to add new integration, I can select Cortex XOR from the dropdown and configure other various powerful alerts to be sent to XOR for analysis. You'll also see that Prisma Cloud integrates with lots of other AWS services, both for ingestion and as third-party integration endpoints. And with this, I'm really excited to turn it over to Prasa and Shalar to show you what XOR can do.
Hi, AWS Reinvent. Now that we have had an opportunity to look at both Cortex XOR and Prisma Cloud, it's time to actually see how Cortex XOR collaborates with products like Prisma Cloud or AWS Security Hub to do automated incident response. And what do we even mean by that, right? So during this demo, we'll go over one of the use cases that we discussed during the presentation, and also look at some of the major pillars of the product. With that, let's start with the dashboard screen. As you can see, case management is one of the strongest pillars of Cortex XOR, where you need to make sure that you're keeping track of all the investigations or incident response that you're doing. So you have a well laid out dashboard that is going to help you understand the health of your SOC, where you can see all new incidents coming in, unassigned incidents, incidents scanned by account. So there are various filters that you can use, of course, and find out different things with policy violations over time or cloud type. And these are out of the box widgets. But again, you can create your own custom widgets for the dedicated persona. So for instance, SOC manager is going to have a different dashboard versus DevOps or IT team or any other team, for instance. With that, case management is really important. But the power of the platform comes from the number of integrations we have in all these different categories, such as threat intel feeds, analytics SIM, authentication, case management, vulnerability management, application security, etc. All these integrations help you realize your use case and convert your manual workflows into automated tasks using a workflow that is called Playbook. With these integrations, what we provide is all the commands or all the infrastructure that you need for carrying out those commands, such as if you look at CloudTrail, right? You provide the right commands, which can be later added to a playbook to create your own workflow, such as create trail, delete trail, describe trails, etc. All these commands are mapped to the right API endpoints behind the screen. And of course, adding an instance is pretty simple. Once you assume a role, you can enter over here. All the API credentials you can enter, and there you go. Once you do that, you can either test these commands manually or run ad hoc in any of the incidents that you find, or include this in a workflow or a playbook. With this, let's take a look at one of the use cases that we discussed, that is cryptojacking in the presentation. So as I mentioned, we have all these integrations. These integrations are going to help you ingest alerts from these products. What I mean by that is, let's say, you enable AWS Security Hub, all these alerts such as cryptojacking or EC2 incident misconfig or S3 bucket misconfig, they start coming in as incidents in XOR. And they will be classified into various incident types based on the property. This is a classifier in place which will make sure that they're put into the right bucket. And after that, there's also a mapper which will map all these raw fields coming from the alert payload into XOR specific fields. As you can see over here, we see basic case information, case details, owner, source, who's assigned to, the work plan that started running automatically, timeline information where the incident came in, what was the time, etc. Even the team members who were involved in this investigation. And also some of the nodes that are being added to the section with the playbook that's running already. Once you map your fields into specific incident fields of XOR, you can also create custom sections such as AWS Security Hub details, where you can see detector ID, AWS instance ID, finding type, finding ID, etc. Also, as I mentioned, we have these commands, right? And these commands will help you put the right output in these sections, such as we ran this command called AWS EC2 describe instances, and you can see all the needed details. Also the indicator section, which is going to extract all the indicators that are coming from the alert with the reputation score as well. If you have enabled any threat intel integration, it's going to give you reputation score for any of the IPs, domains, hashes, URLs that are being extracted. So they are auto-enriched. And of course, there's an investigation summary report, which is added in this section because of the playbook that started running. What this info does is it helps you, explore the alert in a different manner, the information that's needed for the investigation. As I mentioned earlier, when the alert was ingested, a playbook started running, and that's in the work plan. What this playbook is going to do, it's going to remediate the alert of cryptojacking as part of this workflow. So the first step is to print and mark the alert as evidence because it's part of an investigation. And on the right-hand side, you can see that the playbook quarantined the infected instance. First of all, we gathered the instance details using the scribe command. with this particular output. Then later we got the security group details for this particular instance. After that, we can take a volume snapshot, create an EC2 tag for quarantine, and also change the network interface to isolate the instance. Once that is done, you can run and initiate a scan on the EC2 instance, find out the running processes, etc. So all these commands that we have in the integration can be added here to find more information about the alert and in the instance to remediate or not. And of course, you can add an analyst later to analyze the results manually and then close the alert. On the left-hand side, what happened is we extracted indicators and also enriched them using the integrations we already have, found out if there's any malicious indicators here. If malicious IPs are found, we can block them using our firewall integrations or any other products such as PanOS, etc. Once that is done, you can add an analyst again to review what happened, update the Jira ticket that's been created here in the middle. This shows, we don't only integrate with cloud tools, but we also integrate with on-prem tools and helps you manage your case better. Updated the Jira ticket over here, created investigation summary report, and then added an analyst to review again, and then closing the investigation. So you can choose to create your own workflow where you don't need to involve analysts all the time, or maybe send them an email based on their email response. The playbook will flow from there. So this is just one of the examples of how incident response is carried out for different incident types in XOR. But there could be various use cases such as EC2 instance misconfig, S3 bucket misconfiguration, IAM policy misconfiguration, etc. So all the alerts that are being ingested from Security Hub can be remediated either manually or automatically. So that ends our presentation for Cortex XOR, and handing it over to Keith again for the closing notes.
Thank you so much for everyone for joining our presentation here at AWS reInvent from Palo Alto Networks. I'm incredibly excited to have shared, and shown our demo from Prasa and Shalar. If you'd like to learn more about any of the products or solutions that we covered in today's presentation and demo, don't hesitate to check us out both at our booth here at part of AWS reInvent or on the AWS Marketplace. Thank you so much and have a great day.